This is the fifth in a series of videos on how to centralize your IT ticketing experience through AtBot. By incorporating out-of-the-box flow connectors with super smart services that AtBot offers, you can come close to automating all of your Tier 1 IT support processes right through AtBot, all with pretty simple AtBot skills. In this video, we're going to cover how to troubleshoot connecting to a printer, one of those pesky issues that seems to affect everyone at some point. In the background, we'll be using ServiceNow, one of the more popular IT ticketing systems, to track the requests from start to finish. This is part 1 of our printer troubleshooting concept. Part 2 will build on this. Before we get started, you're going to want to make sure you're using Microsoft Flow under an admin or service account. In the case of this demo, you'll also need a premium Flow license for the Flow author, since we're connecting to ServiceNow, which has a premium connector. Likewise, use a service account to connect to the IT ticketing system that you're using if you're not using ServiceNow, so there are no permission issues when running these AtBot skills. Lastly, we'll ultimately be connecting this skill to a custom branded AtBot, which requires either an AtBot Enterprise subscription or free trial. A link to start a free 30-day trial can be found in the description. This skill is pretty simple and starts with a user reporting that they need to connect to a printer. Using Lewis for language processing, AtBot will know to kick off the skill we'll build in this video, which will inform the user how to connect to a network printer. One of the first steps, unbeknownst to the user, is opening a ticket in the background. Even if AtBot deals with this issue successfully, the IT support team should still have metrics on these interactions logged in the ticketing system. That, and they should get credit for dealing with the issue even if it was automated. After the ticket is created, AtBot sends instructions to the user. AtBot will wait a moment for the user to try the steps, then ask whether the suggestion worked. If the user says yes, AtBot closes the ticket as successful. If the user says no, the ticket will be updated, kept open, and assigned to the correct technicians on the service team. So why are we doing this at all? Well, your IT service team definitely gets common questions, guidance needs, requests, and troubleshooting issues regularly. Many of these can be automated, which frees up your techs to be working on other issues, saving valuable human time for tasks that need more creative thinking. Think password resets, Wi-Fi connection issues, account issues, hardware requests, software requests, things like that. These processes are really easy to automate. When a request comes in, you want AtBot to create a ticket and then churn through the standard operating procedure. If it works, great. AtBot was successful and the ticket gets closed. If AtBot couldn't solve the problem, the ticket gets updated and passed on to a human. Depending on the size of your organization, AtBot could save tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of technician time and provide a more immediate solution for users, saving them time and frustration as well. It's totally worth it. All right, now let's get going on actually building this. I'm going to start in Lewis, and I'm going to create a new intent. If you're not sure how to use Lewis, hop into one of our previous videos, and there's a good overview there. So in this intent called Connect to a Printer, I'm going to enter a whole bunch of different ways to say I want to connect to a printer, or how do I connect to a printer, I can't get connected to a printer, all that stuff. So once I have all of these in here, I'm then going to go forward and train my intent, and then I'm going to publish it. So that means my app, which is already connected to my bot, will already work. And then I'm going to publish this, correct my time zone. And once it's published, it's available to connect to the AtBot Flow connector and trigger in Flow. So I'm going to grab my authoring key for Lewis so I can give that key to Flow. And let's jump over to Flow. I'm going to start a new flow from blank. I'm going to title my flow. So troubleshooting, connecting a printer. You can call it whatever you would like. And my trigger for this is going to be when an intent is used. One of the 2 AtBot triggers that we can use. I'm going to give my trigger a description, something that's user-friendly so people understand what it's doing. I'm going to change it to personal so I run it only through the pink AtBot for now. Nobody else can see it while I'm doing testing. I'm going to paste in my Lewis API key, choose the bot that I'm using, or the app that I'm using for this, and in this case, because I'm testing, I'm using a different bot, or a different app, and I'm going to choose the Lewis intent as connect to printer. Now I'm going to create a variable to start with, which will be the ticket ID. So I'm going to rename this. I like to name all of my steps so I know what they are in the future whenever I have to pull out that information. Give it a name. The type is string because it's text. My next step is going to be grabbing the user profile who is accessing this flow so I can be friendly and use their name, or if I ever had to pull their manager's name or their location or anything like that. Next, I'm going to create a ServiceNow record. Like I mentioned, this is pretty much the first step in the process here, or the first real actionable step. So I'm going to create a record, an incident to be specific. I'm going to do a Control F to find the short description, and effectively every time somebody uses this flow, it's going to be the same thing. They need help choosing and connecting to a printer. So that will go into the record. Now, if you're using your own IT Service Desk tool, this is where you would put in that step, whether it's something supported already by Flow or it's something that you would connect with a custom connector. Next, I'm going to set my variable, which is going to be the ticket ID. So I can use this later on. I technically don't have to do this, but it's just easier to have a variable than to have to go searching for this sysid field that ServiceNow provides, but that's up to you. If you're using a different tool, a different IT Service Desk tool, this would actually be even easier for you in that case. Then I'm going to send a reply through AtBot. And this is effectively my greeting, my acknowledgement that I got the request from the user. I'm going to say hello and use the given name dynamic content field from the Office 365 connector that I used earlier. Reply activity always gets reply activity. And I'll rename this so it's clear what this step does. And I'll add another send reply and rename this as well. This is effectively going to be the actual troubleshooting step, the information I'm going to give the user to tell them how to do it. Now in this example, I'm assuming that the user is using Windows 10, but it could be any operating system. In fact, you could ask that question to find out ahead of time what operating system the user is using, so you could give specific operating system instructions. I'm also going to provide the link to the resource, the official Microsoft help, so that you can see screenshots, additional steps, anything like that. And this uses some simple markdown language, but I already have the URL copied to my clipboard, so I can tell the user to just click here. And then reply activity gets reply activity. Now I'm going to put in a short delay so the user has some time to try out the steps, because it's not, an immediate thing. In this case, I'm going to go with 10 seconds, but in the real world, it would probably be more like, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, but that's up to you. And I'll give this step a name so I know exactly what it's for. And so if I'm ever sharing this flow with somebody else, they'll see why I have these steps in here. It's not just me who knows it, it's a little bit of implicit documentation. And then I'm going to send a get choice option to the user, and I'm going to ask them whether or not it worked. This is where we're going to make the decision as to whether or not to close the ticket or keep the ticket open. So after that delay, I'm going to say, hey, were you able to get this printer connected? If yes, we'll close the ticket. If no, we'll move forward with the next steps for getting this towards a human. So that means my next step after I rename this is going to be to add a conditional step, basically an if. If the answer is yes, do this. If the answer is no, do that. So here's that condition, add a condition. And I want to say the response from the last step, that response choice, if that is equal to yes, do this. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to close that ticket. And that's one of the options ServiceNow has. Whichever IT Service Desk tool you're using, you would close that ticket or update status to close, whatever you use. Choose incident. Here's the ticket ID, so it knows what ticket it's looking after. And then ServiceNow has a few requirements. State has to be set to closed. And I'm just doing some control command Fing to find the fields. Resolution code has to be solved, and then in parentheses permanently. This is all cap sensitive. And next, the resolution notes, I don't believe they're required, but they really should be, because it should be known for the future how this works. So essentially this is saying that the user is able to connect to the printer using the guidance that that AtBot sent. And that's it. So I will close that, and then we'll go with a send. Actually, let's give that a name so it's clear why we're updating the record. And the next step is going to be another send reply. And we want to send something friendly to the user saying, hey, that's great. Glad to hear that this worked out. And one last send reply will be the typical farewell. That's sort of a best practice that we've determined on this end, is that you should have a couple standard greetings, goodbyes, that kind of thing, so that it's much more human-like and a little bit more user-friendly. It provides the user more of a human interaction, and they feel more comfortable with it. And it also reminds the user that you can come back and ask the bot for further help in the future, especially since if this works out, it's a positive experience, the person is more likely to come back. And I forgot, you can search for these. It's definitely a time saver. Okay, so we're done on the yes case. Let's jump over to the no case. In this case, I'm going to first ask the user, what didn't work, or why didn't it work? What kind of comments can you provide me that will help me or the next person understand what went wrong? So I'm going to use a get response, so the user has an option to send some text back. So this is basically a user error comment section. So we'll apologize at first that it didn't work out. Grab the user's name, be a little more friendly, and ask for some comments, especially if there's an error message that popped up, so that they can send that in. It's the error code or the error message itself. And reply activity, as usual, gets reply activity. Next, we're going to update the ServiceNow record. And what's going to happen here is we're going to provide that response as part of the update, and we're going to update a couple of the other fields that are necessary. I have noticed that sometimes when choosing this, it takes a little while to load these, because ServiceNow has just so many different record types out there. So let's toss in that ticket ID. And let's update the work notes to make sure that the human that gets this in tier 2 knows exactly what didn't happen. So hey, the standard instructions didn't work, and the user provided these comments. So theoretically, that tier 2 person should have a good idea of what's going on, or at least a better idea than they would otherwise. And in this case, let's change the urgency. Somebody needs to print and they can't print, so that's a reasonably high urgency. And that's it. So we're going to close this step, or minimize this step, and we're going to do our send reply. So this is going to be similar to the yes. Oh, and let's rename that step so that we know what's going on. And let's rename this step. This is confirming the handoff to the human in tier 2. So we're telling the user we've submitted a ticket, which actually there was a ticket already submitted. They never even knew that. but in this case they should know that. In fact, you can probably provide them the ticket number too, just so that they know. And let's send that farewell message, and we'll close the bot steps with this. And remind the user that they can still contact you, even though it may have been a fail this time. Next time it may not be, hopefully won't be. And based on that, that completes the entire skill. So let's save this. And let's jump into Microsoft Teams now. So AtBot, the pink bot, now has this as a personal skill. So if I say help and scroll over, you'll see I can now connect to a printer using natural language under my personal skills. So I'll say and test this out, I need to connect to a network printer. AtBot will respond with that greeting and then the steps recommended to move forward. And if I click here, that's that link, that will bring me to the Microsoft support page for adding a printer, so that information is available to me if I need it, but the answer is actually already in AtBot's response. So there's that delay, that was about 10 seconds. Asked me if I were able to get it connected, I say yes. So now AtBot has closed the ticket, gives me that farewell and the confirmation, and if I go into ServiceNow and I open up the list of open tickets, you will see the most recent ticket is going to be this ticket. And there you go. Shows the steps for opening it, closing it, what the description is, and that's it. It works. This is a simple way to get started, but you can do a lot to improve upon this skill. You could add more options and steps to your skill, including the option to raise the issue to a human early. You could also automatically pull troubleshooting steps from existing knowledge bases and link to support articles internally. That would require a custom connector that you can build yourself, but it's definitely doable. Your responses can also ask for information like location and operating system. You have a lot of options here. So that's a basic example of how to take an SOP from your support team and automate the troubleshooting steps through AtBot. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more great AtBot, Flow, and Lewis information. And feel free to comment if you have any questions. In part 2 in this series on automating troubleshooting, we'll add further language understanding to this skill and suggest specific printers to connect to, making the experience that much more fluid, that much more real.